fat broads and horse-faced lesbians.
I can't think of ways that would make it easier for Donald Trump to get reelected than listening to this conversation.
Let's put forward somebody who's actually a Democrat.
Mr. Bloomberg had policies in New York City of stop and frisk, which went after African-American and Latino people in an outrageous way.
Mayor Bloomberg, can Senator Sanders beat President Trump, and how do you want to respond to what else he said?
I don't think there's any chance of the senator beating President Trump. I don't think there's any chance whatsoever. And if he goes and is the candidate, we will have Donald Trump for another 4 years.
A billionaire who calls women fat broads and horse-faced lesbians. Democrats take a huge risk if we just substitute one arrogant billionaire for another.
And I would argue that I am the candidate that can do exactly both of those things. I'm a New Yorker. I'm a mayor. I was a mayor. I'm a manager. And I'm a philanthropist who didn't inherit his money, but made his money. And I'm spending that money to get rid of Donald Trump, the worst president we have ever had.
The fact of the matter is he has not managed his city very, very well when he was there. He didn't get a whole lot done. He had stop and frisk, throwing close to 5 million young black men up against the wall. I'm better positioned, according to your poll, than anybody else to beat Donald Trump.
Will be Bernie Sanders and Mike Bloomberg, the two most polarizing figures on this stage. Choose between a socialist who thinks that capitalism is the root of all evil and a billionaire who thinks that money ought to be the root of all power. Let's put forward somebody who actually lives and works in a middle-class neighborhood in an industrial Midwestern city.
Are you polarizing?
If speaking to the needs and the pain of a long-neglected working class is polarizing, I think you got the wrong word.
We shouldn't have to choose between one candidate who wants to burn this party down and another candidate who wants to buy this party out.
We are sick and tired of billionaires like Mr. Bloomberg seeing huge expansions of their wealth.
And that's
what we are saying, Pete, is maybe it's a time for the working class of this country to have a little bit of power in Washington rather than your billionaire campaign contributors.
You're the one who is at war with the culinary union right here in Las Vegas. We
got more union support than you have ever dreamed of.
When Mayor Bloomberg was busy blaming African Americans and Latinos for the housing crash of 2008, I was right here in Las Vegas. Literally, we are all responsible for our supporters.
They are not part of our movement. But let me also say, what I hope my friends up here will agree with, is that if you look at the Wild West of the Internet, not being too paranoid, all of us remember 2016. And what we remember is efforts by Russians and others to try to interfere in our election and divide us up. I'm not saying that's happening, but it would not shock me. I saw some of those tweets regarding the Culinary Workers Union.
I have an idea of how we can stop sexism on the Internet. We could nominate a woman.
It's not a plan, it's a PowerPoint. And Amy's plan is even less. It's like a Post-it note. Insert plan here.
Post-it notes were invented in my state.
It's my turn, yeah?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
I'm the only one on this stage that actually got anything done. It cost a lot of money. It cost $750 billion over 10 years. But I pay for it by making sure that Mike and other people pay at the same tax rate their secretary pays at. When you ask Bernie how much it cost, the last time he said that, I think it was on your show, he said, we'll find out.
I wrote an article praising Obamacare. It was either in the New York Post or the Daily News. So the facts are I was there. Let me finish. Thank you. If we took off everybody that was wrong on this panel, everybody that was wrong on criminal justice at some time in their careers, there'd be nobody else up here.
But Senator Sanders, when you were here in Las Vegas in October, you were hospitalized with a heart attack.
And I think the one area maybe the Mayor Bloomberg and I share, you have 2 stents as well. All right.
25 years ago.
Well, we both have 2 stents. It's a procedure that it's done about 1 million times a year. So we released the full report of that heart attack.
Is that response from Senator Sanders enough for you?
No, it's not, because first of all, let me say we're all delighted that you are in fighting shape. And At the same time, transparency matters, especially living through the Trump era. I'm actually less concerned about the lack of transparency on Sanders' personal health than I am about the lack of transparency on how to pay for his health care plan.
Let's level. Let's level, Pete.
I make a lot of money. I can't go to TurboTax.
Yeah, I'm just looking at my husband in the front row that has to do our taxes all the time. We probably could go to TurboTax.
Several former employees have claimed that your company was a hostile workplace for women. When you were confronted about it, you admitted making sexually suggestive remarks, saying, quote, "That's the way I grew up." In a lawsuit in the 1990s, according to the Washington Post, one former female employee alleged that you said, quote, "I would do you in a second." Should Democrats expect better from their nominee?
Let me say a couple things, and if I can have my full minute and a quarter, thank you. I have no tolerance for the kind of behavior that the Me Too movement has exposed. And anybody that does anything wrong in our company, we investigate it, and if it's appropriate, they're gone that day. But let me tell you what I do in my company and my foundation and in city government when I was there. In my foundation, the person that runs it's a woman. 70% of the people there are women. In my company, lots and lots of women have big responsibilities. They get paid exactly the same as men. And in my in City Hall, the person that's the top person, my deputy mayor, was a woman, and 40% of our commissioners were women. I am very proud of the fact that about 2 weeks ago, we were awarded. We were voted the the best place to work, second best place in America. If that doesn't say something about our employees and how happy they are, I don't know what does.
And I hope you heard what his defense was. I've been nice to some women. That just doesn't cut it. The mayor has to stand on his record, and what we need to know is exactly what's lurking out there. He has gotten some number of women, dozens, who knows, to sign non-disclosure agreements, both for sexual harassment and for gender discrimination in the workplace. So, Mr. Mayor, are you willing to release all of those women from those non-disclosure agreements so we can hear their side of the story?
We have a very few non-disclosure agreements.
How many is
Let me
that?
finish.
How many is that?
None of them accuse me of doing anything other than maybe they didn't like the joke I told. And let me put, there's agreements between two parties that wanted to keep it quiet, and that's up to them. They signed those agreements, and we'll live with it.
So wait, when you say it is up to, I just want to be clear. Some is how many? And when you say they signed them and they wanted them, if they wish now to speak out and tell their side of the story about what it is they allege, that's now okay with you? You're releasing them on television tonight?
Senator? No.
Is that right? Senator,
the company and somebody else, in this case, a man or a woman, or could be more than that, they decided when they made an agreement that they wanted to keep it quiet for everybody's interest. They signed the agreements, and that's what we're going to live with.
I'm sorry. No, the question is, are the women bound by being muzzled by you? And you could release them from that immediately, because understand, this is not just a question of the mayor's character. This is also a question about electability. We are not going to beat Donald Trump with a man who has who knows how many non-disclosure agreements and the drip, drip, drip of stories of women saying they have been harassed and discriminated against. That's not what we do as Democrats.
Mr. Vice President.
Look, let's get something straight here. It's easy. All the mayor has to do is say, you are released from the non-disclosure agreement. Period. We talk about transparency here. This guy got himself in trouble and maybe saying that he couldn't disclose what he did. He went to his company.
Just to be super clear, that was about the list of clients.
No.
I know what you mean. No, you're right.
But he went to the company and said, I want to be released. I want to be able to do it. Look, this is about transparency from the very beginning, whether it's your health record, whether it's your taxes, whether you have cases against you, whether or not people have signed non-disclosure agreements. You think that women, in fact, were ready to say, I don't want anybody to know about what you did to me? That's not how it works. The way it works is they say, look, this is what you did to me, and the mayor comes along and his attorney say, I will give you this amount of money if you promise you'll never say anything. That's how it works.
Mayor Bloomberg, final word to you.
I said we're not going to get to end these agreements because they were made consensually, and they have every right to expect that they will stay private.
If they want to release it, they should be able to release themselves.
Can I add a word to this?
Say yes.
Maybe we can talk about a billionaire saying that we should not raise the minimum wage.
But last week, in a Telemundo interview, you could not name the president of Mexico or discuss any of his policies.
We could all come up with things. You know, how many members are there in the Israeli Knesset? 120.
Look, I wouldn't liken this to trivia. I actually didn't know how many members were in the Knesset, so you got me there.
I do think that this really is about leadership and accountability. When the mayor says that he apologized, listen very closely to the apology. The language he used is about stop and frisk. It's about how it turned out. Now, this isn't about how it turned out. This is about what it was designed to do to begin with. It targeted communities of color. It targeted black and brown men from the beginning. And if you want to issue a real apology, then the apology has to start with the intent of the plan as it was put together and the willful ignorance day by day by day of admitting what was happening, even as people protested in your own street, shutting out the sounds of people telling you how your own policy was breaking their lives. You need a different apology.
Senator,
here,
thank you.
Chuck,
you're on the committee that does trade. You're literally in part of the committee that's overseeing these things, and we're not able to speak to literally the first thing about the politics of the country to ourselves.
Are you trying to say that I'm dumb, or are you mocking me here, Pete? He's basically saying that I don't have the experience to be president of the United States. We should put a proven winner in charge of the ticket.
Can I just defend Senator Klobuchar for a minute? This is not right. I understand that she forgot a name. It happens.
And I want to say one thing about Mayor Pete, where we just disagree. He was asked on a debate stage about the Mexican cartels, which are bad criminal organizations. He said that he would be open to classifying them as terrorist organizations. And I think you got that wrong.
Well, at least that's more time in Mexico than anybody. Can I get a chance to say something?
Hold on.
Vice President.
See, thank you.
You said you want to intensify U.S. and international actions to stop the expansion of coal. How exactly are you going to do that?
Well, already we've closed 304 out of the 530 coal-fired power plants in the United States, and we've closed 80 out of the 200 or 300 that are in Europe.
I think we should stop all new drilling and mining on public lands and all offshore drilling.
What would you do with these companies that are responsible for the destruction of our planet?
What would I do with them? I would make sure they, number one, stop. Number two, if you demonstrate that they, in fact, have done things already that are bad and they've been lying, they should be able to be sued. They should be able to be held personally accountable. And they should, and not only the company, not the stockholders, but the CEOs of those companies. They should be engaged. And it's a little bit like, look, this is the industry we should be able to sue. We should go after, just like we did the drug companies, just like we did with the tobacco companies. The only company we can't go after are gun manufacturers because my buddy here, but that's a different issue.
We're going to stay on the topic. How far would you go to force China to reduce those emissions and tackle the climate crisis?
Well, you're not going to go to war with them.
China is, in their Belt and Road proposal, they're taking the dirtiest coal in the world, mostly out of Mongolia, and spreading it around the world. It's clear. It made it clear when you called them to Washington in the first 100 days. If you continue, you will suffer severe consequences because the rest of the world will impose tariffs and on everything you're selling because you are undercutting the entire economy.
I'm the only one here that I think that's ever started a business. Is that fair? Okay.
Billionaires today, if you can believe it, have an effective tax rate lower than the middle class. So
Senator,
maybe
you're
just
the tax code. Why are you complaining?
What?
Who wrote the code?
You did. You and your campaign. Not me. You and your campaign contributions electing people who represent the wealthy and the powerful.
Yes,
those are the folks.
Democrats. Thank you.
And Republicans too.
Okay.
And George W. Bush as well.
Chuck.
We have a grotesque and immoral distribution of wealth and income. Mike Bloomberg owns more wealth than the bottom 125 million Americans. That's wrong. That's immoral. That should not be the case when we got 500,000 people sleeping out on the street.
Mayor Bloomberg, should you exist?
I can't speak for all billionaires. All I know is I've been very lucky, made a lot of money, and I'm giving it all away to make this country better. And a good chunk of it goes to the Democratic Party as well.
Should you have earned that much money?
Yes. I worked very hard for it.
You know what, Mr. Bloomberg? It wasn't you who made all that money. Maybe your workers played some role in that as well.
Mayor Bloomberg, you own a large company. Would you support what Senator Sanders is proposing?
Absolutely not. I can't think of ways that would make it easier for Donald Trump to get reelected than listening to this conversation. It's ridiculous. We're not going to throw out capitalism. We tried that. Other countries tried that. It was called communism, and it just didn't work.
So let me make a proposal that will work.
Senator Sanders, in our latest NBC News Wall Street Journal poll released yesterday, 2/3 of all voters said they were uncomfortable with a socialist candidate for president. What do you say to those voters, sir?
What was the result of that poll? Who was winning?
The question's to you.
Well, the question was that I was winning, and I think by a fairly comfortable margin. Mike mentioned that. But here is the point. Let's talk about democratic socialism, not communism, Mr. Bloomberg. That's a cheap shot.
Wonderful country we have. The best-known socialist in the country happens to be a millionaire with 3 houses. What did I miss here?
Well, you'll miss that I work in Washington, House 1.
That's the first problem.
Live in Burlington, House 2.
That's good.
And like thousands of other Vermonters, I do have a summer camp. Forgive me for that. Where is your home? Which tax haven do you have your home?
New York City, thank you very much. And I pay all my taxes. And I'm happy to do it because I get something for it.
And the American people, the middle class, is getting killed.
You wrote an award-winning essay. You praised Senator Sanders. You specifically praised him for embracing socialism.
Look, it's true that I was into Bernie before it was cool. He was thank you, congressman at the time. Where's the other $25 trillion supposed to come from?
I don't need to be told I'm a friend of Mitch McConnell's. Mitch McConnell has been the biggest pain in my neck in a long, long time.
The best way to protect the dreamers is to have a new president.
Este país es tu país también.
Gracias.
Everyone was as perfect. I wish everyone was as perfect as you, Pete. You've memorized a bunch of talking points and a bunch of things, but I can tell you one thing. What the people of this country want, they want a leader that has the heart for the immigrants of this country.
Mayor Bloomberg, to you.
Well, you can join me at MikeBloomberg.com, too, if you want, but I'm not asking for any money. Look,